So we're going to sketch a landfill. And so the Resource Conservation and Recovery Act, or RCRA is the way they often say that, is the law that regulated the design of modern sanitary landfills. So as you may recall, the name landfill means basically land. Typically it was wetlands in the past that was filled in with garbage. And so again, wetlands, a lot of contamination of water, not a good thing that happened. And so we realized this was a bad idea. And so they then started mandating, in fact, a lot of the Superfund sites across the United States are actually old landfills. So they started regulating the proper design of landfills. So when they do a landfill, they actually will dig into the ground. And so here's kind of my pit going into the ground. And the first thing they're going to do once they dig into the ground is they're often hoping it's going to be clay, but otherwise it will be, they'll bring in clay and they'll put a thick layer of clay. And that layer of clay is very impermeable clay because again, we don't want, when rain falls into the landfill, we don't want that rainwater to flow out of the landfill. That garbage juice, people refer to it sometimes, but the official name actually is the leachate. So this is the water from a landfill. So again, it's the rainwater. The rain comes in here and we don't want it to then go further down. So this clay is very impermeable and they will take this clay and they will compact it. Then after they do that, they will put in a liner called a synthetic. Again, remember the word synthetic means man-made, so a synthetic liner. So it's a thick plastic liner that they will put in it. Once they've done that, now no water should flow through this or get out of this landfill. The problem is when it rains, it's going to start filling up with water. So you need to have a system to remove this rainwater from the bottom of there because again, think of it like a big bowl. I keep dumping more water in when it rains, but there's no way the water can flow out. So what they do is they put in the bottom a whole bunch of tubes, and then these tubes have holes in them, and then they cover these tubes with a bunch of gravel. This way the rainwater will settle, it will percolate down, it'll get into that gravel, it'll get into these tubes, and then they'll basically take and pump the water out here. And so this is what's called the leachate, because that's that rainwater collection system. So they will now remove the water from the landfill. They will treat it, they will test it before they go ahead and then discharge it into a lake or a river or groundwater or something like that. So that is the base design of a landfill. Then once they start operating, they'll put in some garbage. So there's my lovely drawing of some garbage. And then every night they will put a cap over it. So here is my cap. The cap might be some soil or it might be like some tarps that they will put over the landfill. Eventually over time, and I probably should have done this in a different color, okay, the landfill fills up. So every day there's a little cap and there's a little cap and things like that. Eventually the landfill, typically the way you can often recognize landfills is they build up a lot. So there are places up by the Glen and up north, there's a golf course, if any of you are golfers, and that golf course right up there, it's like really, really high. In fact, a lot of my students who are golfers will talk about it's really windy up there. That's an old landfill. And basically they cap the landfill and then they build way up, keep putting garbage in it, and then at the end they put kind of a cap on it. And this cap is like a soil cap that they will put in it. Now, there's a couple other issues that they have to have or things they have to take care of with the landfill. One is all around the landfill, around the outside, upstream and downstream, they have to monitor the groundwater. So there's a groundwater monitoring system. And again, I drew it like this big box, but basically think of it like a big straw, okay? And essentially what happens is they're testing the water, that's the groundwater all around here, and so then they can tell maybe contamination came from somewhere else, or they can tell if there's a leak in this landfill, and then they have to shut it down and figure out where the leak is and fix or remediate that. So that monitoring is really a big deal. Finally, a landfill, they take the soil and the garbage and they compact it in there every day. And as they compact it in there every day, not a lot of oxygen gets in there. And so the conditions in it are anaerobic. So I'm drawing these, look like kind of H's here, okay? But these are basically methane collectors. Because what will happen is, again, the conditions in here, it's so compacted, there's no oxygen. It's anaerobic respiration. Okay, so I'm gonna actually write that over here. Anaerobic, again, no oxygen, anaerobic respiration happens. The garbage gets compacted, and then bacteria slowly convert that to methane. And so that is what happens. Well, if I build up all this methane in the landfill, I could have an explosion or something could happen. So they actually collect that methane, and in some cases they just burn it off so that you don't have that risk of it exploding. In other cases, what they will do is they will use it and collect enough of it, and they'll actually burn it to generate electricity. So they'll actually, one thing is they can actually recover a source of energy from that, from landfills. There's not enough methane produced from landfills to replace all natural gas, but again, that is something, an advantage they can have from those landfills and burning that from landfills. So again, these are my main parts of a landfill. Is my clay liner, my synthetic liner, my leachate collection system. Then there's the cap that goes on, nightly cap, and then at the end a big cap over the whole thing. There is the groundwater monitoring system. Again, big idea with the landfill is we don't want to contaminate the groundwater. So that's where the clay liner, the synthetic liner, and the leachate collection system, and then are all part of that. And then the groundwater monitoring system is making sure it's not leaking. And then again, the conditions in a landfill, because they can pack that trash together, is the conditions are anaerobic. So then you have to also collect methane for safety's sake. So those are the main parts of a modern sanitary landfill, which is regulated under, this design is regulated under RCRA, which is the Resource Conservation and Recovery Act.